Good afternoon. It's Tuesday, the 20th of March 2018, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. Your host today, Mike Robinson, myself, Brian Garish. Where do we begin?
Run, hide and tell, Brian, and particularly the tell part, because this is the message from counter-terrorism police today. Let's have a look at their little video clip. This is a counter-terrorism policing film. Well, doesn't it look wonderful? It's all very cinematic. And what they're saying, this is communities defeat terrorism, apparently. With the enduring terrorist threat, it's now more important than ever that everyone plays a part in tackling terrorism. Your actions could save lives. Don't worry about wasting police time. No call or click will be ignored. What you tell the police is treated in the strictest confidence and is thoroughly researched by experienced officers before and if any police action is taken. Any piece of information could be important. It's better to be safe and report. Remember, trust your instincts and act. Action counters terrorism. This is a complete rip-off of your...
Action conquers fear.
Yes, exactly. So what should you report? Well, like other criminals, terrorists need to plan. They need to, so you can report suspicious activity or behaviour. For example, if somebody was to buy a hammer from a local DIY shop, you might want to tell the police about that, Brian, because that might be considered suspicious behaviour. What could potentially be terrorist-related suspicious activity or behaviour? Well, they say meetings, training and planning can take place anywhere. Do you know someone who travels but is vague about where they're going? Do you know someone with passports or other documents in different names for no obvious reason? Do you know someone who looks at extremist material, including to the so-called dark web, or shares or creates content that promotes and glorifies terrorism? Have you noticed someone embracing or actively promoting hateful ideas or extremist ideology? Suspicious materials can be ordered online as well as in store. Have you noticed someone receiving deliveries for unusual items bought online? If you work in commercial vehicle hire or sales, has a sale or rental seemed unusual? Have you noticed someone buying a large or unusual quantities of chemicals, fertilizers or gas cylinders for no obvious reason? Have you noticed someone acquiring illegal firearms or other weapons or showing an interest in obtaining them? Terrorists need to store equipment while preparing for an attack. Have you noticed anyone storing large amounts of chemicals, fertilizers or gas cylinders? Have you noticed anyone storing illegal firearms or objects that could be potentially be weapons? And observation and surveillance help terrorists plan attacks. So they have a section there called hostile reconnaissance, Brian, and it seemed to me that the one agency or organisation in the UK at least, which could be described as using hostile reconnaissance, is in fact the government.
Is the government itself, and as we're going to see, if you criticise the government, you could be in for big trouble. So we've got a terrorist threat. Obviously, the UK government has helped create that threat. We know that terrorists have been funded via UK government sources, money going into terrorists who were operating in Libya. We've seen the same pattern with Syria. Now the same government is encouraging people to spy on each other. Best model of this is East Germany, Mike, where the whole system got so complex that you could have family members working for the state, spying on other family members. You didn't know who your neighbour was. This is how you absolutely destroy communities and have people at each other's throats. And of course, it was a very brave metropolitan policeman who was prepared to speak out. I'm not talking about John Wedger in this case, but another policeman who was prepared to speak out and warn that the government's prevent strategy was actually breaking down local societies and grooming youngsters into hate crimes, which I'll use a deliberate phrase there. So this is how you destroy a society, by inducing fear and then getting people to spy on each other as players for the government. It's very sinister.
Yes, so they have set up this website from the Counter-Terrorism Police, Action Counters Terrorism, ACT, report suspicious activity. I would say that, people might consider the behaviour of the British government and the British authorities as suspicious. Do we mention Sergei Skripal at this point? Perhaps Maybe there's plenty to report. They've provided a nice website for us to report it, so maybe that's where we want to be starting.
Okay, right. Well, we'll think about that. This is real. We had communication from yet another police whistleblower. Very encouraging, Mike, that we have so many police who are desperately worried about what they're seeing and experiencing the police force. He says that there's now to be specialist police units who are going to watch Brexiteers. If you are concerned about what the government is doing over Brexit, Brexit without the exit, of course, then the government sees you as a potential extremist, a threat, and the police are now setting up special cells to deal with you. A bit of Freudian slip there, I think, but we know exactly what's coming.
Yes. Well, what's coming was defined by David Davis yesterday, because, of course, the government released their new interim, or their new agreement for the transition period. They've agreed on a large part of what is going to be considered an orderly withdrawal from of the UK from the European Union. So says Michel Barnier and David Davis. They're calling this a decisive step, this new agreement. So what have we got? A transition period which is going to last from the 29th of March 2019 until the 31st of December 2020. EU citizens arriving in the UK between those dates are going to have the same rights as those who arrived before Brexit. And the same will apply to UK expats on the continent. The UK will be able to negotiate its own trade deals during the transition period. This is something that the EU absolutely denied any possibility of up until now. And if you want a bit more on that, watch yesterday's UK Column News programme. The UK's share of fishing will be guaranteed during the transition period. And afterwards, during the transition period, the UK will effectively remain part of the common fisheries policy. We'll come on to that in a bit more detail in a second. Northern Ireland, apparently, they've struck some kind of deal where Northern Ireland will stay in parts of the single market and the customs union, unlike the rest of the UK. So not quite clear how that's going to work. David Davis said, and today we've taken another significant step by reaching agreement on the next phase of Brexit without the exit. Didn't quite say that. He did mention trade. He said that the implementation period is not about providing certainty in the short term. It's also about beginning life outside the European Union, serving as a platform on which we build our future relationship. So it's all about providing new opportunities for businesses across the UK and seizing one of Brexit's great opportunities. On fisheries, he said, we've agreed specific safeguards when it comes to annual fishing negotiations. These arrangements will only apply for the negotiations in 2019, since we'll still be a member state for those that take place at the end of this year. Through 2020, we will be negotiating fishing opportunities as an independent coastal state, deciding who can access our waters and on what terms. And for the year that's relevant, we've agreed with the European Union will have to consult us ahead of negotiations. And this was the key point, I think, in what he said. The United Kingdom's share of the total catch cannot be changed, protecting the interests of the United Kingdom fishing community, but that means that it can't be changed in either direction. So in fact, what we're looking at seems to be is something pretty similar to what we've got at the moment. So the fishing community probably not going to be terribly surprised, terribly excited about that. Lots of people, lots of Brexit campaigners today calling this a betrayal, including UKIP. The Brexit transition deal agreed by the UK government will keep us in the common fisheries policy. It's a total betrayal, said Mike Hookham, MEP, Deputy Leader of UKIP. Well, Mike Hookham, it's not as if we didn't tell you that this was exactly what was going to happen. And were you really so naive as to trust the Conservative government in the first place? Well, let's just move on slightly with this and look at what he said about defence. Well, first of all, let's look at what the actual agreement says about defence. It doesn't say too much. It says, should the European Union and the United Kingdom reach an agreement governing their future relationship in the area of the common foreign and security policy and common security and defence policy, which becomes applicable during the transition period, Chapter 2 of Title 5 of the Lisbon Treaty is what that says, and the acts adopted on basis of those provisions shall cease to apply to the United Kingdom from the date of the application of that agreement. But what's the stuff from the Lisbon Treaty isn't really important here. What's important here is the fact that they are acknowledging that there is going to be an agreement on the future relationship. Now, we'll come on to that again in a second. And it also said that talking about how much are we going to pay into European defence institutions, it says until 31st of December 2020, the United Kingdom shall contribute to the financing of the European Defence Agency, the European Union Institute for Security Studies, and the European Union Satellite Centre, as well as the cost of common and security defence policy operations on the basis of the same contribution key as before the date of entry into force of this agreement in accordance with Article 4A. So in other words, we will continue to pay in as normal to the EDA and the EDF, as we have been saying here at the UK column for some time, and so it goes on. Now look, let's just have a brief look at what David Davis actually said, because this is quite interesting.
The final way in which the implementation period serves as a platform for the future is in foreign and defence policy. As recent events demonstrate, close cooperation with our allies is central to standing up for a rules-based international order. So when it comes to foreign policy and defence collaboration, we have set out a plan for an ambitious partnership, one that goes beyond the relationship the European Union has with any other third country. And I know this desire is shared by our European Union partners. The deal we've reached today envisages us moving to that partnership at the soonest possible moment. And in the intervening period, our valued cooperation will continue.
So, Brian, we've got to say to Mike Hookham and all the other UK people that pay attention to the UK column news and so on, this is exactly what we've been warning about. We are going to be part of EU military unification, and we're going to be part of EU military unification at the earliest possible moment.
And of course, we got bilateral treaties under the surface. We're coming out of one partnership straight into another partnership. It's all basically smoke and mirrors on the surface. Nothing changes underneath. The locking of Britain into the unified EU military structure means we cease to exist as a nation state because we're not in control of our own defence. This is absolutely Brexit without the exit. Well, thank you very much to Caroline, who sent these images through. We're going to get some more information on this, but at the end of last week, voters put in a petition to Downing Street of over 1 million signatures where people are saying Brexit should mean exit. So they're asking what the government is doing. I couldn't find any mainstream media reports on this. If somebody can see these, please let me know. But there are the petitions being held out. I've said voters at the Downing Street Iron Curtain, and that's what it is. We've got our armed police there. Clearly, Mike, the UK government is in fear of the people. Why would it be fearful? Well, because of course it is up to no good, criminal activity, deceit, and 17 million people absolutely ignored over the desire to come out of the European Union. And it takes people like this to go to London, to stand in front of that Iron Curtain in bitter cold, in order to say to the government, 17 million people voted to leave, you're not leaving at all, you're betraying the country. And silence from the media. So this is not just the Conservative Party, of course. Labour and the Lib Dems are all involved. They're all part of the con. And it's going to be up to a great many people to be banging the table to make sure there is an exit in the Brexit. Quick advertisement as usual. AV9 Alternative View Conference, Friday the 4th of May to the 7th of May 2018 at the Horwood House Hotel. Still rooms and tickets available for that. Details on alternativeview.co.uk. The Media on Trial event in Leeds on the 27th of May. Get along to that as well. Very important that you do. Mediaontrial.uk for more information on that. And the media needs to be on trial. Mike, this came out over the weekend. I heard it as a news report on Radio 2. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This is a horrible and tragic death of a young Egyptian girl, Mariam Mustafa. She was attacked by a gang of girls on a bus in Nottingham. She ultimately went into a coma, and although she came out of hospital at one point, she died. And the BBC says that this is not a hate crime. You should be aware that girl is beaten up, she subsequently dies, but this is not a hate crime. And the reason, of course, it's not a hate crime is because we've now got this political newspeak that for it to be a hate crime, somebody had to decide that they were going to beat this girl to death because of the colour of her skin. We haven't got any evidence that that's what they wanted, so it isn't a hate crime. They just beat her to death, basically.
Right. For no reason?
For no reason.
Right.
So we wait to see what comes out of this. But BBC now, I think the BBC is working, on a different planet, can we say? But we're not going to get truth. We're not going to get accurate reporting from the £3.74 billion UK propaganda machine called the BBC.
Okay, Drill or Drop, we intended to cover this yesterday, but we didn't have time. Drill or Drop website here, headline is Shires of England Rise Up as Oil Company UKOG seeks High Court injunction against protests. This is further attempts to bring in injunctions against lawful protest in this country. So Bianca Jagger, Sue Jameson and Joe Corey are providing support for some local residents in Surrey and Sussex to bring a defence or try to prevent this injunction being put in place. UKOG is UK Oil and Gas, of course. And what the campaigners are saying is that this would prevent campaigners the injunction is seeking to prevent campaigners from protesting where, quotes, the predominant intention would be to injure the company's economic interest. Well, of course, the predominant intention has got nothing to do with economics or preventing companies or hurting companies' economic interests. It's in this case to prevent what they see as damage to the environment. Absolutely legitimate reason for protest. If as they further their protest, this should hurt these companies' economic interests, then the companies want to have an injunction in place. But what's very interesting is that UKOG is claiming that this injunction is aimed at a small minority of activists who seek to deny our fundamental democratic and legal right to go about our lawful business. Their fundamental and democratic legal right to go about destroying the environment is something that they want to prevent people protesting against.
So the company is seen as the innocent party from the outset, whereas members of the public who have concerns are the criminals.
Well, that's what they're claiming. And what they're saying is recent actions by activists have forced us to seek this injunction. And those recent actions include forcible entry and illegal occupation of their Horse Hill site, criminal environmental damage, threatening behaviour and assault. Well, first of all, those are absolutely untrue statements. There's no activist has committed any criminal damage or threatening behaviour or assault. Quite the opposite. They're more likely to be. They have been on the receiving end of assault from various people, including the police. But the point here is that those allegations are all criminal offences already, and if activists had been caught carrying out criminal damage or forcible entry or threatening behaviour or assault, then the police would have arrested them and they would have been found guilty in a court of law. There's no need for a separate injunction to prevent protest here. And what they're ultimately aiming for, both UKOG and NEOS, is to get to a point where they can target activists on a financial basis. They want to bankrupt people who are taking part in activist activity. And they also want to set up protest pens. This is really where they ultimately want to get to. I think because that gives them the opportunity to say, well, we're facilitating the freedom of speech and protest.
As with Bilderberg, which we attended a few years ago, where you're corralled into a nice, neat little location where you can shout and you can do what you want to do, but you're not really bothering the big people in their black window cars driving into the hotel to have secret meetings.
Absolutely.
You just stay over there. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, let's come back on to Theresa May and the Conservatives, and I'm going to say thank you very much to the lady that reminded us about this Independent article. This is going back to 2017. Theresa May to create new internet that would be controlled and regulated by government. So I think what we're starting to see now, I've just taken some screenshots. So the Tory manifesto revealed the UK should be a global leader in internet regulation. We want to lead the world in closing down free speech, to put huge restrictions on what people can post, share and publish online. So much as with those fracking demonstrators, they need to be controlled. You can't have a free opinion with Theresa May's Conservatives, because that's going to be regulated. Some people say that it's not for government to regulate when it comes to technology and the internet. We disagree. So we don't really care what ordinary people, voters say. We, the government, will tell you what you need, and what you need is us to regulate the internet. And I think this will end on this one. And we're going to encourage internet companies to help with official schemes to combat extremism. So exactly where you started today, Mike, we can see all of this pulling together. We've got a draconian, dangerous state. This is fascism going to control free speech. And if you push free speech, you must be an enemy of the government. Therefore, you're going to be designated a terrorist. Now, a few days ago, we were warning about the antics of a company called Cambridge Analytica. They were in front of a parliamentary inquiry which was talking about fake news. There were some quite good reports on this, but the chief executive, Mr. Nix, was going to be talking about the way in which data could be used to target messaging and their experience in, quote, data-driven communications and marketing, and how such targeting contributes to the echo chamber effect on social media. This is all about the manipulation of individuals through social media. They were linked into this immensely powerful group, secretive type company, SCL Group. Encourage you to have a look at them. They are, what are they talking about themselves? It provides data analytics and strategy to governments and military organisations. There we are. Worldwide, for over 25 years, we've conducted behavioural change programmes in over 60 countries. So we've got this very powerful group linked into military organisations boasting that they can change people's behaviour, not just in the UK, but in over 60 countries worldwide. Have a look at the people and the partnerships yourself. And it goes on, a mission statement, vision to be the premier provider of data analytics and strategy for behaviour change. So they see themselves as ultimately being a world leader in how you interfere with people's thought processes and change their behaviour. That's brainwashing. And then we get back to Mr. Alexander Nix. You can have a look at his background. How has this man become so powerful? And why are we showing you this? Well, this is where we've got to today. So The Guardian, with, I have to say, a very good article. What is Cambridge Analytica? The firm at the centre of Facebook's data breach. A closer look at the company that has hit the headlines after it was revealed that some 50 million Facebook profiles were harvested. This is the scale of it. And in the video clip, the gentleman on screen there at the moment, Christopher Wiley, says quite calmly that by getting into a few hundred thousand individuals, we could then move through all their friends and connections. And then we're really beginning to understand what's going on across America as a whole. Now, this is the whistleblower. And I'm going to say credit to this man because he's really taking the lid off it. He says of the chief executive, Alexander Nix, that he's an upper-class Etonian. He expects people to follow him wherever he goes. He said he was with me, and he starts his sort of razzle-dazzle, oh, we work for the Pentagon, we work for the Ministry of Defence, MI6, da-da-da-da-da. So this is a very, very dangerous company. Who is it working for? Itself? No, it's working for the government and the security services because they're boasting about it. They had special apps on Facebook to harvest data, not just from the person who used the app or joins the app. It would then go into their entire friend network and pull out all of their data as well. This is immensely dangerous stuff. We would know what sort of messaging you were susceptible to, and then how many times do we need to touch you with that to change how you think about something. You know, it's a full service propaganda machine. And this is in the background of a British Conservative government that's already boasting that its behavioural change team was so successful they'd sold the technology to America and Australia. So this is the man, Alexander Nix. He said to the government when he was in front of that committee, we don't work with Facebook data. We don't have Facebook data. We do use Facebook as a platform to advertise, as do all brands. That's what he said to the government.
So was that a lie then?
Well, this is what Christopher Wiley says. The company itself was founded using Facebook data. So he says, yes, he doesn't use the term lie. He says what's being said is not true. We were based on Facebook data, and they harvested 50 million people's private data in order to help change their behaviour. And remember that Cambridge Analytica is the company that it's alleged has been harvesting data for veterans in order to specifically help the government focus in on veterans and what they're doing. Why would that be? Well, of course, the government is very frightened at the moment that former military servicemen and women will wake up and start to organise to counter the treason and deceit. Very good article here from the Business Insider on Mr. Nix. It says the Facebook data scandal has all but confirmed Cambridge Analytica's shadowy role in the US election, but its involvement in Brexit is even more murky. So they were supposedly helping Leave. Well, were they? Because ultimately they were harvesting data from any and everybody. I think they were working with Leave to get the information on people who wanted Brexit, Mike. That's my personal opinion. So there's a couple of quotes there. The CEO boasted, we've already helped supercharge Leave EU social media campaign by ensuring the right messages getting to the right voters online. But once they had that data, that could be sold back into the British government, Mike. So I think this is pretty dangerous stuff. Encourage people to read this Guardian article because they've got a very nice breakdown as to what's going on. And where have we got to now? Well, we're into this. Cambridge Analytica warrant sought to inspect the company. And there's a Channel 4, what do we call this, hidden video clip that was taken of Mr. Nix. They're saying, well, he's sort of encouraging people to get in and blackmail people. I'm interested as to whether that's true or not, because what he's saying is that, of course, where we've seen politicians trying to set up big deals to feather their own nests, when they've been caught on tape, the corruption has been there for everybody to see, which is more or less what this man says in this particular thing. So, Mike, not sure what your take on it is, but Cambridge Analytica and the British government working to use behavioural change, this is a very dangerous combination.
It is, but of course, one of the aspects of this that isn't clear yet is what exactly was Facebook's role in this. Facebook must have known that this data was being hoovered up by Cambridge Analytica. They must have been complicit in that.
This is where it gets very murky, because what they try and say is, well, we did agree that they could do certain work, but the fact they've passed the data on to other individuals is a brief of the original policy.
Right.
So it's murky.
Okay, and this warrant is being sought by the Information Commissioner in court. Some people are saying this suggests that the Information Commissioner doesn't actually have enough power at the moment to do what they need to do in order to protect people's data.
Right.
I don't think I agree with that. I think that it's absolutely appropriate that there should be a court process in this, because this is, at the end of the day, about individual data breaches, which are a criminal offence. So there is a court process required on that. And the Information Commissioner shouldn't have blanket powers to just walk into somebody's offices and themselves inspect what could be private information. Because
it's circumventing the law, such as it is. Well, let's follow through on the Brexit theme, and we better bring in Mr. Vince Cable. This is from the European publication. Cambridge Analytica data leak shows yet more folly of leaving the EU. I thought this was wonderful spin by this man, Mike, that we've got all this trouble with Cambridge Analytica, but we need the EU, and we'll have a look at why in just a second. But at a meeting at, where was it? It was the Queen Elizabeth Conference Centre in Westminster. That was Monday. Yes, that was yesterday. Sorry, the weeks disappear so quickly. It says Brexit. He said, in fact, Brexit is a non-violent civil war, and the pro-European groups should draw together in the national interest. So now we've got Brexit, where we're starting to call it civil war. All they need is the violence on the street, and we're going to be into a full-blown dictatorship. But of course, Vince Cable, very offensive man. He's said publicly that if you're older and you voted Leave, really it's because you wanted the white Britain. I took that as a racist comment, because I think I can put myself in that bracket. I'm older. I certainly voted to get out of the European Union. He's telling me I'm a racist. And at the Stay or Go conference, some fascinating stuff. Part of the agenda at 12:10, pro-European groups join forces in the national interest, with Chuka Amuna MP in conversation with Henry Porter. And then 2 o'clock, Brexit's non-violent civil war can be stopped, with Sir Vincent Cable. And how's he proposing stopping it? Well, we're not leaving the European Union. 6:15 p.m, call to EU citizens to cast your votes at the local elections. Now, one of the reports on this particular meeting, I can't remember which newspaper it was, pointed out that most of the audience was not British, and the final part of that was the Great British Stop Brexit March, which is on the 20th of October. So this is these British politicians working their best to betray the country. Let's give a bit of detail on Mr. Cable. He described the Cambridge Analytica scandal as a strange story. And he told the Should I Stay or Should I Go conference in central London that it highlighted the extent to which the global economy is now dominated by a handful of extraordinarily large, powerful companies, of which Facebook is one, together with Google, Apple and Amazon. And do you know what we need to stop all of this? He says we need the European Union. And the one organisation at the moment which is actually coming to grips with these very large global corporations is the European Commission. And the work suggests that at the moment there is only one organisation which actually understands the problem and is shaping up to deal with it. We are too small, weak and pathetic as the United Kingdom to stand up to Facebook and Google and Amazon, Mike, and we need the European Union. This is appalling stuff from this man. He needs to be brought to book in a cuddly sort of way.
Okay.
Well, let's put in an ad for the Dying for Good Health conference on the 12th of May. You can see details here on the UK Column webpage. Thank you for that, Mike. And I'm just going to say that the UK column has been working very hard in the background to make this conference happen. We were trying to do something last year, we couldn't. This is now coming together. This is going to be very different. We're looking not only at the NHS, but wider healthcare. We're looking at that transformational management, whistleblowing, big pharma, privatisation and more. We're all users of this healthcare system. Are we going to lose it? And the speakers, we can say, this is a very dynamic range of speakers. A couple of them you may know, but these are new people. And I'm going to say to our audience, if you believe that we do need to protect our healthcare in this country, you need to come to this conference and hear these people speak. So we'll give you more on the speakers, what their experience in it is and what they're talking about. But this is a very powerful conference, and I hope that our UK column subscribers and indeed British Constitution Group subscribers will support. There is a discount for you.
Okay, apparently we're going to have closer US-UK defence ties. This is Mark Lancaster, who was over in the United States a couple of days ago, and he wants to reinforce defence ties with the United States. Increasing cooperation, they say, between the nations was agreed in key meetings with the American Secretary of the Army, Mark Esper, and Secretary of the Navy, Richard Spencer. But actually, when you come to look at this in a bit more detail, what's it about? It's about unified defence procurement, modernising defence program, the US National Defence Strategy, and so on. And they're talking about the F-35 program. They're talking about unmanned air systems and a common missile compartment for UK and US ballistic missile submarines, Brian. So it's actually about procurement. This is not about, it's about the military-industrial complex and not about sort of taking part in joint operations. It's all about money.
That is all the stuff that goes on in the background, yep. And we've been warning about it now for some time.
And just a quick update on the Sergei Skripal situation. Theresa May is meeting with the National Security Council today to consider, as the Mail headline here says, Britain's next move. The 23 diplomats have now been leaving the country. The Russian diplomats are leaving the country today, and that's been on the front page of the BBC, images of them leaving. We don't know what the National Security Council is going to decide today, if anything, but we'll keep you posted if anything interesting happens.
Yes, but I can add to that I was delighted to see that President Putin was throwing the British Council at Russia.
Yes.
I got a very warm feeling about that because, of course, UK column has been warning about the real activities of non-government organisations and indeed some of the bigger charities on a world scale. And remember, it's the BBC's own BBC Media Action that, of course, has been boasting of its ability to go into countries overseas and help destabilise them. Syria was one of the key ones, but Kazakhstan was certainly another that the BBC's been working in, openly boasting of destabilising countries. And of course, what results from that? Rioting, deaths, just shocking stuff. So I'm not surprised that President Putin has put a finger on the British Council. Right, quick advert for an article on the Hofstra case, which, small covering article, but in fact is an audio interview between myself and Alex Thompson. You can find it here on the UK column site, The Dark Harp of the Deep State. And what we're talking about is the case where a Mr. Hofstra has been taken out of the UK and is now in a psychiatric unit in Austria. And effectively, he's there for life unless something happens. Why is he there? Well, we believe it's to protect the British state and fairly deep criminal activities taking place in the United Kingdom. So if we've now got the UK government encouraging a Stasi system of people reporting on each other, of course, using the psychiatric system to incarcerate people and keep them quiet if they're embarrassing the state or finding out too much about what the state is doing, was also part of that East German system.
Okay, financial inclusion, we'll end with this one. This is the Global Policy Forum for Financial Inclusion. This was the 2017 event, which took place in September last year in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And we've got another one, the African Financial Inclusion Policy Forum. And we have another one here, which is the Financial Inclusion Policy Forum, which is in the, I think that was Jordan, if I remember correctly. Now, the point I'm making here is that this idea of financial inclusion is a global policy, but the UK has just decided that it is going to launch a financial inclusion forum. So industry leaders in finance, consumer groups and the regulators are met the first time yesterday for the government's Financial Inclusion Policy Forum. Their mission is to ensure that people, no one's to be left behind, Brian, people, regardless of their background or income, have access to useful and affordable financial products and services. And so the forum is going to be co-chaired by John Glenn, the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, and Guy Opperman, Minister for Pensions and Financial Inclusion. It's going to meet biannually. It's going to have people like people from Step Change, Experian, the University of Bristol, the Money Advice Service, Financial Inclusion Commission, Money and Mental Health Policy Institute, the Money Advice Trust, the Association of British Insurers, Money UK, Money Saving Experts, Citizens Advice, UK Finance, the Lloyds Banking Group, National Housing Federation, the Nationwide Building Society, Capital Credit Union, Age UK, Post Office Limited, Toynbee Hall, the Financial Conduct Authority, the Just Finance Foundation. So that's the list of people taking part in this. What's it all about? Well, of course, it doesn't matter how poor you are. You may be mainly doing business in cash, but actually you don't want to be doing that. You want to have a debit card. You want to be getting involved in the financial services that are only normally available to people that are much more affluent. But, if we're moving towards a cashless society, you cannot have the poor running around with cash. That just would not be appropriate.
No, and highly significant, Mike, just to come back to the BBC for a moment, that when the BBC was doing its dirty work in Kazakhstan, they had a new version of Crossroads for that country. Those of us old enough to remember Crossroads, pretty soapy soap. But in the new BBC version, this whole thing was worked together to help people in Kazakhstan understand that they needed a Western banking system, they needed credit, they needed to be able to use credit cards. So this was the propaganda that the BBC was pumping into that country. You can find the details of that in the article, which is on the UK Column website. But we see the two things going hand in hand. Massive propaganda machine pushing the interests of the international bankers who are creating money from nothing.
Indeed.
And we'll end there. We'll say thank you very much to all the people who helped make the New Chartist Movement event in Nottingham on Sunday a success. Over 70 people there, I believe, and all the reports we've seen very positive. And of course, the New Chartists are saying it's not enough to sit and watch what's going on. There are certain key actions for you to take. Hopefully those won't make them terrorists, Mike. Actions for you to take. And if we do these things, of course, we can make a big impact on what's happening. The fraudulent nature of creation of money from nothing is a key part, and the Bradbury pound is still very much a start of a solution to the monetary situation. So if you don't know what the New Chartists are doing, have a look online and learn more. That's it for today. Thanks very much for joining us. We will be back at the same time tomorrow. Bye-bye.